Hi, I'm Cameron Sheets with Queerty, and it is an honor to be joined today by Zachary Quinto to talk about his new series, Brilliant Minds. Zachary, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing well. I think,
Good.
for anyone who might be watching this that doesn't know yet, your Brilliant Minds character, Dr. Oliver Wolf, is based off of a very real person, the late Dr. Oliver Sacks, who, just had this incredible impact on so many things, field of
Yeah,
neurology specifically,
sure.
but I mean, to start, I'm curious, how familiar were you with him and his work and his impact prior to learning about this role, if at all?
Yeah, I was familiar with who he was, but I knew a fraction of what I know now. I was a big fan of the movie Awakenings with Robin Williams and Robert De Niro, directed by Penny Marshall, which is a beautiful film, holds up, today. And so I knew a little bit about his work, but he was, yes, a pioneer in the field of neurology, but he was also a prolific author. He was considered by the New York Times to be the poet laureate of medicine because he wrote inexhaustibly about his patients. He was fascinated by the lost art form of case study. In the early 19th, 20th centuries, before medicine became so driven by technology and before it became so driven to the diagnostic industry that we know today, the way that doctors learned about patients and how to treat them was by writing about them, and then other doctors would read those writings and add to them. And so there was a much more fluid and human experience of medicine. And in its greatest form, it aspired to literature. And so Oliver Sacks was fascinated by that notion, and he was really single handedly responsible for resurrecting the art form of case study. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, probably being one of his most famous books, but Awakenings, and Anthropologist on Mars, Musicophilia, Hallucinations, I mean, and many more. He wrote a beautiful memoir called On the Move. But he also gave TED Talks and lectures and interviews, and there was no shortage of source material for me to dive into. He had a very complicated relationship to his identity as a gay man. He was celibate for 35 years of his life. It wasn't until much later in his life that he was able to discover and cultivate a substantive, meaningful, and sustaining relationship. So he was endlessly fascinating, endlessly complicated, and endlessly flawed, but also truly brilliant and absolutely just endlessly interesting.
It's interesting you bring up Awakenings because this series allows us to do something that that film didn't because of when it came out. I mean, we're able to kind of, especially by setting the story in modern times, talk about the doctor as this gay man. And that's just like not necessarily something, obviously, we really knew until much, much, much later in his life. Why does that feel like an important aspect of him to you in terms of just like, I mean, there's any number of examples, Dr. Oliver Sacks. I mean, gosh, Rock Hudson. There's so many folks who, in their heyday, we didn't
Hmm.
necessarily know, but we're gay and part of the community, but we've been able to sort of reclaim them, I guess,
Right,
so to speak, in
sure.
recent years.
It's a complicated issue in some ways. I mean, I think one's sexual identity, and particularly one's identity as a gay man, has historically been at odds with the concept of masculinity. It was in many ways, I think, in the times of Oliver Sacks and Rock Hudson, who you mentioned, and certainly Tab Hunter and Anthony Perkins and the many other gay stars who reckoned with their identity at a time when it was really a singular issue. If you were gay, then that was the thing that defined you. And it was the thing that contextualized your ability to have a relationship with a career and an industry. And it was the be all and end all. And so there's something fascinating to me about being the first openly gay lead of a medical drama playing an openly gay character at a time when that is only one aspect of who I am, and it's only one aspect of Oliver Wolf. And I think that one of the reasons Oliver Sacks was celibate for 35 years, and this is a great tragedy of the time that he was born in, was because he wanted to be able to have all of the other experiences in his field that he knew that he was singularly destined and designed to have, and that if he was honest about that part of himself, he would have been denied that. And it's, I get emotional talking about it because it is an example of how far we've come. And it's an example of how truly fortunate I am and we are to be living in this moment of our evolution. And it's all the more reason that we have to defend our rights and fight for our rights to continue to live full lives, and not lives that are defined in the way that a certain faction of the political landscape in this country would have us believe we are, defined by only one thing that for whatever reason engenders them with a fear that they cannot comprehend. So for me, there's like the version of it that's like it's really not a big deal, and then there's the version of it which at the same time it's the biggest deal right now. It's a lot of things happening at once, and I'm just trying to kind of hold them all and show up for all of them as they require my attention.
It's something I run into all the time covering queer media. On one end, we want to be like, this is just the fabric of our lives. That label shouldn't matter if this is a queer show or a queer character, but at the same time, it very much does. And it's really important. It's so cool to see you on this network series. As you mentioned, this is a history making role in some ways in that
Well,
sense.
I don't know about all that. I just know that for me, it's a very different experience than I've had in the past. And I have, yeah, NBC and kudos to NBC for telling this story. I've had a wonderful time working with them. Everybody there has been so supportive of what we're doing and the spirit in which we're doing it. So I'm very grateful that they're creating a home for this story to be told, and that they've invited me back to the place that really changed my whole career when I was on Heroes over 15 years ago. But I definitely feel grateful for that return, and I think there's no mistake that there's a sense of return for me personally in my own life right now. That in these intervening years, I've done a lot of work on myself, and I've really I really try to kind of keep digging deeper in my experience. And so it's a nice reflection of that to come back. And yeah, I'm grateful for that part of it, especially.
Absolutely. I mean, gosh, I think back, first time I remember seeing you in something was on So NoTORIous.
Oh,
And of
yeah,
course,
sure.
you're playing a bisexual character then. This is a different time. Like, I
Yeah, yeah.
imagine your your feelings towards playing that role at the time, or as you mentioned, you've evolved a lot since then. So
Uh-huh. Right. Interesting. I had a great time
yeah,
working on So NoTORIous, which I think was also in its own way ahead of its time. It has changed. And I remember where I was in my life and in my career, and feeling like, I mean, at that time, anybody who knew me knew that I'm gay, but I hadn't had a conversation about it professionally, and there was still a lot more stigma around it, which still exists now. And so I don't know, we just all have to bring what we can to the conversation and hope that collectively it evolves.
absolutely. I mean, extremely well put. And just to bring it back to Brilliant Minds, I was just going to say, of course, like Dr. Wolf's sexuality is but a small part of who he is and what the show is. But I'm like, if we need any more proof that this show is for the gays, we've got Donna Murphy in it. Like, come on.
We do have Donna Murphy in it. Donna Murphy, icon of stage and screen.
Yes.
I love Donna. I actually worked with Donna for the first time when I was 13 years old,
Oh my God.
in Pittsburgh at the Civic Light Opera in a production of Oliver, where I was one of the street urchin kids and Donna Murphy played Nancy. And I remember, actually, because it was in the early days of my relationship to theater. And I remember, actually, I would stand in the wings of the Benedum Center in Pittsburgh and watch her do her big number in Oliver, which is called "As Long as He Needs Me," and just marvel at her connection to what she was doing. And I remember being a 13-year-old kid. So yet another way in which this kind of full circle, the thought that I would then, over 30 years later, be working with this woman and having this incredible creative dynamic with her. And the other one, not for nothing, is, Heroes, that we're talking about, returning to NBC, returning. So Heroes, the whole premise of Heroes, for anybody who hasn't watched it, is that in the pilot episode, there's a solar eclipse. It awakens the powers that all these people that are just walking around the earth have. We started filming Brilliant Minds season 1, April 8th, the day of the solar eclipse.
Oh,
So this
wow.
kind of crazy through line, of like, wait, what is happening? There's something that's kind of like inexplicable to me about the connection that I have to this project, and so in that end, I just feel really grateful that we've found our way to each other.
Yeah, that's really, really special. Well, I've got to wrap there, but congrats. I'm excited for everyone to see this series. I'm excited for everyone to see you
Thanks.
again with Donna Murphy. You two are so
Yeah.
fun together in this. So
Thank you so much. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks for the time.
Good to see you.